So let's start with the presentation on exemptions under the Stockholm Convention. The first slide is showing the three main different types of exemptions that are available under the Stockholm Convention. One is considered as general exemptions. Such exemptions are available because there is no significant quantities of the chemical are expected to reach humans and the environment, which means that it is has less risk than used in other purposes. And so those are provided under the Stockholm Convention. For example, use for laboratory scale research. This is available under paragraph 5 of Article 3. Unintentional trace contaminants, constituents of articles, closed system site limited intermediate. I'll be explaining more in detail in these slides to come. The second one is specific exemptions. This type is most well-known exemptions. This is when there are alternatives, but parties may require a transitional period. So this is a time-limited exemptions. Most of them are 5 years, as provided in Article 4 of the Convention. There are a few exceptions. One is PCB, that has no time limitation. It is not in accordance with Article 4, but in accordance with Part 2 of Annex A. Other exceptions are the two types of brominated divinyl ethers listed in Annex A to the Stockholm Convention. The third one is acceptable purposes. This is given when there are no alternatives to the use of the chemical at the time of the Stockholm Convention's adoption. And the COP reviews the continued need for such acceptable purposes, and the review process is also provided within the Convention provision, and the decisions adopted by the Conference of the Parties. The steps to register for specific exemptions and acceptable purposes is quite simple. The first thing is to identify the national needs for specific exemptions or acceptable purposes on the basis of available alternatives or the impact that the country might experience in introducing or terminating the use of the chemicals concerned. So the information on use and production at the national level, this is requested for to be provided within the form for notification of exemptions, and whether the country has alternatives which have affordability, availability, accessibility, and so on. Another element to consider is the time required for phasing out of production and use. Most of the specific exemptions under Article 4 has 5 years time limitation, but the countries can decide to indicate a shorter span, which can be provided in the form shown in the right corner of the slide. The format has been adopted by the Conference of the Parties, and they are available on the website of the Convention under Exemptions menu. So the format needs to be filled and submitted through the official channel to the Secretariat, and Secretariat is to maintain the register on the website. In my next slide, I'll be showing the chemicals listed under the Stockholm Convention with specific exemptions or acceptable purposes. As you can see in this slide, I think all of the specific exemptions are in gray. This is same as what you see on the published version of the Stockholm Convention, with footnotes saying that please note that as at 17 May 2009, there were no longer any parties registered for the specific exemptions listed in Annex A pertaining to those chemicals that in accordance with para 9 of Article 4, no new registrations may be made with respect to such exemptions. So those specific exemptions provided for the chemicals that were adopted in 2000, together with the first Stockholm Convention, all of them are now indicated in gray that no new registrations may be made with respect to those exemptions. And the list continues to the next slide. So hexachlorobenzene and Mirex were also of those 12 chemicals that were listed from the initial Stockholm Convention. Other chemicals that have exemptions are listed in black color font. For example, hexabromocyclododecan for expanded polystyrene and extruded polystyrene in buildings. This is the exemption for the use. And also production for parties listed in the register. We have specific exemptions for hexabromodiphenyl ester and heptabromodiphenyl ester, linden, and pentachlorophenol with salts and esters, polychlorinated biphenyls, polychlorinated naphthalenes, technical endosulfan and its related isomers, tetra-BDE and penta-BDE. The two new chemicals, pentachlorophenol and its salts and esters and polychlorinated naphthalenes, those were adopted at COP7, and those have not been in effect for any parties as yet. The chemicals listed in Annex B has acceptable purposes and specific exemptions. With regard to DDT, it is the same as other chemicals that I have just explained, that as 17 May 2009, there were no longer any parties registered for the specific exemption for DDT, that no new registrations may be made with respect to such exemptions. PFOS has several acceptable purposes and specific exemptions. So it was very long, and the list continues to the next slide. The first slide shows all the acceptable purposes that are currently available. And the next slide shows specific exemptions. As you can see in this slide, that the 6 of the 12 uses are listed in gray font: carpets, leather and apparel, textiles and upholstery, paper and packaging, coatings and coating additives, rubber and plastics. This is in accordance with decision SC7/1, by which COP noted that as there were no longer any parties registered for specific exemptions for the production and use of PFOS salts and PFOS-F for those uses, that no new registrations may be made with respect to them. I'll be explaining different provisions under the Stockholm Convention and the decisions taken by the COP in relation to exemptions under the Stockholm Convention. The first is Article 4, which provides register of specific exemptions. The register is established to identify the parties that have specific exemptions listed in Annex A or B, which is available on the website of the Stockholm Convention. Upon becoming a party, the party may notify the Secretariat in writing to register for one or more types of specific exemptions. So the key here for Article 4 is the notification submitted to the Secretariat. And with this, the register is maintained, and it is important that the party take action on this matter if such need is identified. Registration of specific exemptions expire 5 years after the date of entry into force of the Convention. And when there are no longer any parties registered for a particular type of specific exemption, no new registrations may be made with respect to it. This is in accordance with paragraph 9 of Article 4. The review process for the entries in Register of Specific Exemptions was adopted by the Conference of the Parties, and it's available in Decision SC/3/3 and also amended by 4/3 and 7/1, paragraph 1 for the duration of this review process. So currently this review process is in effect, which says that a party may submit a request for an extension of an exemption at least 12 months before the last meeting of the Conference of the Parties that takes place before the expiry date of the exemption. When submitting such request, the party should report information that justifies the continued need for such exemptions. The information will be circulated by the Secretariat to parties, and parties and observers are requested to provide more information about such need of exemptions. And then the Conference of the Parties will decide on the request for an extension of an entry in the register prior to the expiry date of the exemption. Until now, this has never been conducted, including at last Conference of the Parties. It took place in 2015. The relationship with Article 4 provisions is provided in Annex A, Part 1, in Note 4. So if you look at the Part 1, there is the list of chemicals in a table, and after that table there are several notes that provide important provisions. And one of them is Note 4, saying all the specific exemptions in Annex A may be exercised by parties that have registered exemptions in accordance with Article 4 with the following exceptions. The first exception is PCB, which is in accordance with Part 2 and may be exercised by all parties. So for PCB, there is no need to submit notification to the Secretariat, but all parties may exercise this exemption. The second is the use of hexabromodiphenyl ether and heptabromodiphenyl ether, which should be in accordance with Part 4, and tetra-BDE and penta-BDE in accordance with Part 5. Those two chemicals is not bound to the 5 years expiry date, but it has a review process provided, and the year 2030 is indicated as the ultimate year for expiry. I'll be explaining about those two types of BDEs in the later slides. So let's take a look at Part 2 of Annex A, which provides how PCB exemption should be implemented. It provides by 2025, parties are to eliminate PCB by making determined efforts to identify, label, and remove from use the equipment containing PCB. And there are 3 priorities provided. The last priority is the PCB of concentration level greater than 50 milligram per liter, or the volume greater than 50 milliliter. Other things indicated in this provision is parties shall not, the PCB shall not be exported or imported except for the purpose of environmentally sound waste management, and promote measures to reduce exposures and risk to control use of PCB, do not allow recovery for the purpose of reviews, except for the maintenance and operation services purposes. It also provides that no later than 2028, the environmentally sound waste management of liquids or equipment containing PCB of concentration level greater than 50 milligram per liter should be undertaken. So we have two specific goals with years indicated, 2025 and 2028 for polychlorinated biphenyls. And in order to review the progress made towards elimination, the provision also states that parties report on PCB information in Article 15, national reporting, and Conference of the Parties reviews progress towards elimination of PCB. In the convention text, the frequency is provided as, I think, 3 years, but it was decided that this review should coincide with Article 15 national reporting. So currently it is undertaken every 4 years duration. And then another thing I would like to mention is the constituents of articles containing PCB. In lieu of constituents of articles that is normally considered as general exemption for PCB has to manage in accordance with Article 6, paragraph 1. This use is considered as open applications, for example, cable for cable sheaths, curd cork, and painted objects. And this information is also required to be provided in Article 15 national reporting. Part 3 of Annex A is definition, so I just skip that. And Part 4, which provides provisions for hexabromodiphenyl ether and heptabromodiphenyl ether, is summarized in this slide. The specific exemption allows recycling of articles that contain or may contain the chemicals, and the use and the final disposal of articles manufactured from such recycled materials, provided that there are the conditions that the parties need to follow, which are recycling and final disposal in environmentally sound manner, and not to lead to recovery, and take steps to prevent exports of such articles that contain the chemical at concentrations higher than permitted within the territory of that country, and notify the Secretariat. So unlike PCB, parties need to notify the Secretariat in order to exercise this specific exemption. And Conference of the Parties evaluates the progress that parties have made towards elimination of the chemicals and review the continued need for the specific exemptions every 4 years, and the specific exemption shall in any case expire at the latest in 2030. So as I said, that this exemption does not expire in 5 years, but the Conference of the Parties reviews every 4 years for the continued need. Part 5 of Annex A is almost identical to Part 4 of Annex A. This is for tetrabromodiphenyl ether and pentabromodiphenyl ether. The only difference is in the second bullet point. It says not allow exports of such articles that contain the chemicals at concentrations higher than permitted within the territory of that country. So for tetra-BD and penta-BD, this is a little bit more stricter than hexa and hepta-BD. For the Conference of Parties to undertake the review, there is a process provided in Decision SC 6/3, process for the evaluation of progress parties have made towards eliminating brominated diphenyl ethers contained in articles, and the review of continued need for specific exemptions for those chemicals. In accordance with Part 4 and 5 of Annex A, the first review took place at the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And the frequency is provided as every second meeting after. So the second review will take place at COP 8, and then it continues, will take place at COP 10, 12, and so on. The format for the submission of information for the review was adopted in, there was a revised version adopted at Decision SC 7/4 And an online questionnaire was developed and is currently available for parties in the convention website. The focal points has received email from the Secretariat with username and password in order to log in this online questionnaire. The deadline for submission of the information on BDE is 31st March, so parties are highly encouraged to provide information so that the COP8 can undertake the review of the progress made in elimination of BDEs. There are additional parts in Annex A that are not yet published in the convention text as publications, but was adopted by the Conference of Parties, and those are part 6, 7, and 8. The first one, part 6, is on technical endosulfan and its related isomers. This part provides that the parties need to notify the Secretariat in order to exercise this exemption. And the specific exemptions may be available for the use of endosulfan for the crop pest complexes. So crop pest complexes is a big table with the name of crops and pest, which the endosulfan can be applied in case the parties needs to exercise this specific exemption. Part 7 is on hexaboromocyclododecan, and this part also says that the parties need to register for the specific exemption, and another provision is to take necessary measures to ensure that EPS and XPS containing HPCD can be easily identified by labeling or other means throughout its life cycle. A similar labeling condition is provided for Part 8, pentachlorophenol and its salts and esters. So again, each party that has registered for the exemption shall take necessary measures to ensure that utility poles and cross arms containing PCP can be easily identified by labeling or other means throughout its life cycle. There's an additional one more sentence in this part, which is articles treated with pentachlorophenol should not be reused for purposes other than those exempted. So now we have seen all the parts under Annex A, and let's move on to Annex B, Part 2, DDT. This provides the how the DDT acceptable purposes can be exercised. It says the production and use of DDT shall be eliminated except for parties that have notified the Secretariat. And each party that uses DDT provide to the Secretariat and the WHO information on the amount used, the conditions of such use, and its relevance to that party's disease management strategy. For DDT, there is an evaluation process provided by the COP decisions. So COP is in consultation with WHO is to evaluate the continued need for DDT for disease vector control. And an expert group for DDT has been established for such review process. And the decisions relevant to DDT is provided in the slide. Annex B Part 3 is on PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-F. The production and use of PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-F shall be eliminated except for parties that have notified the Secretariat. So again, the notification is the key to exercise this exemption. And each party that uses and or produces the chemicals report on progress made to eliminate PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-F, and submit information in Article 15 national reporting. So similar to PCB, that this information on the use of PFOS salts and PFOS-F is to be provided in line with Article 15 national reporting. And COP evaluates the continued need for those chemicals for the acceptable purposes and specific exemptions. And the process was adopted at COP6, indices on SC 6/4. The first review took place at the last meeting, COP7, and the second review will take place at COP9. So those review takes place at the ordinary meetings of the Conference of the Parties. So it continues at COP2, after COP9, it continues to COP11, COP13, COP15, and so on. Information provided in Article 50 national reports and other information collected by the Secretariat is used in the review. And two other reports that the Conference of the Parties are to consider. One is the report on the assessment of alternatives to PFOS salts and PFOS-F developed by the POPs Review Committee. And another is the Secretariat's report on the evaluation of PFOS salts and PFOS-F. So for the POPs Review Committee's report, the committee will prepare a terms of reference of the report, not next meeting, but the meeting after, so that it will be prepared in time for COP9. We've seen Annex B, Part 2 and 3, which provides conditions for DDT and PFOS salts and PFOS-F. And I would like to go back to the little notes that are provided in Part 1 of Annex A and Annex B regarding the general exemptions. First is on unintentional trace contaminants provided in Note 1 of Annex A and also Annex B. Quantities of chemical occurring as unintentional trace contaminants in products and articles shall not be considered as listed in Annex A and Annex B. Is what it says there, and for this use, unintentional trace contaminants, parties do not need to notify or write to the Secretariat in order to have that unintentional trace contaminants in products and articles. Another is constituents of articles. This is in Note 2, which says quantities of chemical occurring as constituents of articles manufactured or already in use or on the date of entry, already in use or on the date of entry into force of the relevant obligation with respect to that chemical shall not be considered as listed. So for this one has, again, it's the same concept that the constituents of articles can be continuously used, but provided that a party has notified the Secretariat that a particular type of article remains in use within that party. So there is a form adopted by the Conference of Parties for notification to the Secretariat with regard to constituents of articles in use. The third one is on closed system site-limited intermediate. This is provided in Note 3 of Part 1 of Annex A and Annex B. Given that no significant quantities of the chemical are expected to reach humans and the environment, a party, upon notification, may allow production and use of the chemical as a closed system site-limited intermediate. The Note 3 is quite a long note, so you really have to magnify the text and read it carefully. It says the manufactured chemical does not exhibit characteristics of POPs, taking into consideration the criteria in Annex D, paragraph 1. It also indicates that such production and use shall cease after 10 years. So there is a time-bound period provided for closed system site-limited intermediate. there is a process in case if the party needs to continue. So if the party submits a new notification, the period will be extended for an additional 10 years unless the COP decides otherwise. And the notification procedure can be repeated. So one specific example is that at last COP7, such new notification was provided for the use of DDT for the production of dichlorol. And this was decided. The COP did not decide otherwise, so the COP took note that an additional 10 years is available for this exemption. Now I have gone through all the provisions in Annex A and Annex B, and I would like to add a few more information about the trade of chemicals provided in Article 3. According to paragraph 2 of Article 3, chemicals listed in Annex A and Annex B can only be imported for the purpose of environmentally sound disposal or for a use or purpose which is permitted for that party under Annex A or Annex B, as I was just explaining about the conditions of exemptions. These chemicals for which there is a specific exemption or acceptable purposes can only be exported for the purpose of environmentally sound disposal to a party which is permitted to use that chemical under Annex A or B, or to a non-party to the convention which has provided an annual certification to the exporting party. I would like to provide further information about what is the non-party to the convention which has provided an annual certification means. So export to a state not party to this convention pursuant to paragraph 2b of Article 3. Says the term state not party to this convention includes, with respect to a particular chemical, a state that has not agreed to be bound by the convention with respect to that chemical. That means that that country is a party to the Stockholm Convention, but not yet bound to the particular chemical that were listed after by the Conference of the Parties. For example, the decisions taken at COP4, COP5, COP6, and COP7. And for this one, there's a procedure required under the convention, which says before allowing export, the exporting party should require from the state of import to provide a certification using the format that was adopted by the Conference of the Parties. The exporting party shall transmit the certification to the Secretariat within 60 days of receipt. And the next slide shows the form that was adopted, that provides name of exporting party, name of importing state, identification of imported chemical, intended use of the chemical, a statement of the importing state showing commitment to protect human health and environment by taking necessary measures to minimize or prevent releases and to comply with paragraph 1 of Article 6. And as appropriate, paragraph 2 of part 2 of Annex B. So this form was adopted by the Conference of the Parties and is available for use of parties in case if there is a need to use this form, in case where there is the export to a state that is not party to the convention needs to take place. The format can be downloaded from the web link indicated in this slide. I think this is all information I have, and the meeting document presented at last Conference of the Parties provides a vast range of information that relates to exemptions under the Stockholm Convention. And I hope that with this presentation you will be able to understand better with the reading of this meeting document, COP7/4/Rev1. But in case if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact the Secretariat for more information. Thank you.